All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank everyone for being here. We really appreciate this as we begin the discussion about the issues of growth in Davie County. We appreciate especially our municipal partners being here. Town of Monksville, town of Bermuda Run. I hope someone's here from the town of Coolamy. There's so many things that happen in the municipalities that we don't necessarily have control of, but we do a great job working together for the vision and the future of the county. So we thank all of our staff for being here, all of the work they've put into this, our friends from the DOT for being here, and we'll get started with Commissioner Finney. Will lead us in the invocation.
Please pray with me. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for bringing us all here this afternoon. We thank you for this wonderful county that we're blessed to call home. Thank you for all the blessings and gifts that you have bestowed upon us, and help us not to take any of those for granted, but to be thankful every day. Help us to look forward into the future of this county and to create a vision that is the best direction to go for all citizens who live here. Lord, as we know, so many people in our midst and in our county are going through hard times right now. We just lift them up to you, Lord, and we just pray that you will put your hand upon their lives and just bless them, heal them, and let them know that they are loved. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Commissioner Reniger will lead us in the pledge.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We now want to adopt the agenda. We want to make one correction to the agenda. We want to remove item 9. We're just not quite ready to have that discussion here today. Brian, did you have anything you want to say about that? Or
that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. So if we could have a motion to adopt the agenda, removing item 9.
I make that motion.
Ms. Finney, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Reniger, any questions, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to you. It looks like you're ready to talk.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. First, we want to say thanks for this opportunity. We understand that this topic is a little bit bigger than our normal once a month monthly meeting, and we have been working this summer to put this together. Mr. Easter is going to do part of the presentation. We also have some folks from DOT. I know that traditionally doesn't sound like it goes hand in hand, but as you do infrastructure, typically growth and development follows. So I thought it would be appropriate. I know in my year here, we have not had DOT come give us a presentation. We have a very large project in the works, and I wanted them to give you an update on it because we know that once that is finished, that's an area that will be prime for development, which is a perfect segue into their presentation. They're first on our agenda. We have a copy of their presentation, so we will make sure to get you that afterwards so you can have it for future reference. So I'm going to turn it over to Pat Ivey, who was our NCDOT Division 9 engineer, and let him do his magic.
While Mr. Ivey's coming up, we kind of have an intense format here today, an agenda. As you'll notice, there isn't a great deal of open discussion that's going to take place in terms of from citizens that are here today. But I do want to say to the commissioners, as we get into this, if you have questions individually, have statements that you want to make, we are here. You're the representatives of the people. We're here to discuss the issue of growth and what you see through the people of the county, what we believe is the vision for growth in Davie County. And so I want to make sure that you guys know, ask questions. as we move, and I hope our presenters will be flexible enough with us to be open to the commissioners if we raise our hand, just to let us speak a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Ivy. Appreciate you being here.
Chairman Jones, members of the board, we do appreciate the opportunity for being invited here. I was talking to Brian earlier, and this type of format that you're talking about is certainly timely, particularly for Davie County, with all the growth and development that we've seen over the years and what is sure to come. And certainly, as was mentioned, transportation plays a large part in that. So we're going to talk, I did invite with me today our new district engineer, which includes Davie County, Scott Jones. Scott took Jeremy Guy's place. Jeremy was promoted, and Scott has been in that position for a couple of months now, so he's going to be giving part of this presentation as well. So let me just jump right into it for the sake of time. Just as a primer, if those, for some of you who may not be aware, of course, North Carolina is divided up into 14 highway divisions, and we are division number 9, covering Stokes, Forsyth, Davie, Davidson, and Rowan counties. Total population, nearly 850,000 people, nearly 5,000 road miles, 836 bridges. And in Division 9, all 5 counties, we have about 453 permanent positions. Now, if you dive down a little bit farther, in Davie County, population of 43,553 back in 21, 521 road miles, 57 bridges, and 23 employees in our DOT offices here. And I think that number is important because we do a lot of work in Davie County, and the fact that we can do that with only 23 employees is nothing short of amazing. And they're a great group of folks, so I want to give them a shout out there as well. So what I want to do, I want to turn it over to Scott, let him give you a brief update on all of our projects that are going on in Davie County, and then we'll talk about moving forward in our prioritization 7.0, some of the projects we're looking at trying to move forward in the next version of the TIP, and then if time allows, give you a little bit of information on transportation funding and some things you might want to think about moving forward. So I'll turn it over to Scott. Scott?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. First one I'm going to go over is U6002. This is the roundabout down here on just right down the road at Wilkesboro and Yackenville Road. Couple project facts. As I mentioned, TIP project U6002. The original let date for this project was June the 22nd, 22. Completion date late 23. I know there's you see the progress. So, it's a concern for the department. We're actively discussing, liquidated damages to hold the contractor accountable for the schedule and woes. I know there was some delayed mobilization to the project. DOT, we realize the concern this, have communicated that to Country Boy Landscape, the contractor, and do expect to see progress as we go. The next major milestone for the project is earthwork. Water, sewer, storm drainage is currently ongoing. Actually, I could tell that they were actually working on some today. So I think they realized the monumental task they're up against to finish in late 23. But I will say that the next major milestone, grading and getting asphalt down. So that's the next major milestone for the project.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask you this question because literally I got a call in the parking lot, even though the county is not involved in this project. But now I'm getting the Farmington Road. Hey, you guys put together, DOT got Farmington Road done in a month. And this project is lingering on and on and on. Could you, just briefly, we don't have all day, just kind of give us, kind of in layman's terms, why this project is lingering, and we were able to go in, or you guys, and miraculously go in and get that ready for Friday night football and school to start.
And I'll segue to Pat, but I do know right away on the Farmington roundabout, we was all done with the existing right-of-way. So that is one major phase of the project that, that was the benefit of the 40 Farmington roundabout. Utilities was also, there was no utility impacts to the 40 and Farmington roundabout. So those are two of the main delays we typically see on our projects, but I will.
The main reason is because our DOT forces are quite good.
Well,
So I appreciate you recognizing that, Mr. Chair.
and I will say that the Farmington 158, where it stands now, will be built by state forces the way we're proceeding with that. So I will say that, for the next project that we'll get into, that is we definitely understand the concern, and it's a concern of ours.
But the utilities truthfully have played a huge part in that.
Yes, I mean, it's just a far more, I'm actually managing the one up in Walnut Cove, and, we had a similar situation where our roundabouts for our Beltway project were built in, roughly 2 weeks. Well, we had 350, 400 feet of water and sewer to relay, and the storm conflicts that come with that. So it is, while, the public sees, it just looks like it's slow to kind of evolve, and don't get me wrong, it is slow to evolve. There is some complications to the project that make it unique.
Right.
Well, Mike's here and with the newspaper, and I think it's just great that you guys can communicate to the public, what's going on here, what the difference is, and you're not being unreasonable. I don't think the citizens are being unreasonable to ask questions about it. So,
Well, and we want to be realistic too. So
Right.
that's the main thing is being transparent with the scheduling woes. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that too.
I just have one more question. On the Wilkesboro roundabout, at this point, there's no, I guess it's construction, so there's always unforeseen, but at this point, some of the unforeseen issues, the utilities that we weren't, all that's been identified, so it
We're
should
getting
be
into the grading and
smooth
asphalt.
sailing.
Yes, once we get into the grading and the asphalt, the paving operation, typically in my experience, a lot of the unknowns are kind of beyond us. Right away has been acquired. Your major milestones or your major schedule hurdles have been overcome.
Thank you.
The next two projects I'm going to kind of go over is the two roundabouts at Farmington, well, in close proximity to 40. At the top of my screen, you got the one that is finishing up, that was built by state forces, and we got the roundabout at 158 in Farmington, the U5854. Just wanted to provide that overall, just so you can kind of see it on a map. This is a schematic of the I-40 ramps at Farmington. This one is 98% complete. Still waiting on our roadside environmental unit to put some Central Island plantings and some minor erosion control and ground stabilization. And beyond Duke Energy for street lighting, that project will be complete. So it was, as I'm sure you're aware, State Forces, our maintenance folks, built the eastbound ramps about 3 summers ago. So 2 more successful projects by our Davie maintenance folks. So very, very proud of those guys because they really do get it done. Here's the overall schematic of the R5854, the roundabout at 158 and Farmington. Right-of-way has been acquired. Utility relocation to begin probably the next month or 2. We'll start with dry utility relocations for that project. Current let date, which if it's built by state forces, this is just kind of a ready for construction date, July of 24. Looking into, and this is more for Brian or Philip, but as far as funding, going to reach out to the STIP unit and see what kind of construction funding is available. Just to make sure, these are one of these projects that's obviously good to get going in the summer when you don't have school traffic. And I know with North Davie nearby, want to make sure that we, as much as we can get done during the summer months, is advantageous to everyone. So a little Bermuda Run item here. The right turn lane on 801 at 158. Obviously immediate need of those familiar with this area understand, what this can do to help reduce northbound congestion. They're actually, this is once again built by our Davie maintenance forces. Estimated completion date into September. They were actually out there building drainage boxes earlier today, so that's actively moving. A lot of utilities in that area, so once again, you know, it has its challenges, but I think Davie has proven that they're able to overcome them. So estimated completion date, as I mentioned, end of September for this one. These are long-range projects I wanted to bring up. R 5736, which is the 601 widening from Madison Road to Cana Road. These are basically in the 25% complete. We've got hydraulic design, but we haven't finished utility coordination. I have a lot going, lot still to go into this, but planning and design works to begin early of 2024. Right-of-way date April 26, and looking at construction in the spring of 28. So just wanted to more or less just put this one in your, you know, this one, you know, is forecasted out there a little ways, but, you know, it's I think the original, or the preliminary cost estimate for this project, $17 million. So, you know, 601's widely traveled route, so, but just wanted to let you know that this one's coming up in the next couple of years, and design will proceed accordingly.
Excuse me, how many lanes is that gonna be?
It's, I thought I had four, yeah, 2 lanes each direction, median divided.
And it does include the replacement of the bridge over Interstate 40 as well, which is a huge part of this project.
So completely median divided without turning areas, or? I mean, you got,
Yes, there are certain areas where we will have median breaks.
right, but other than those median breaks, nothing.
Where will the median start?
Basically at the ramp for the ramps for Interstate 40 and continue north along US 601.
And I can provide the individual plan sheets
Thank you.
after this, is when I send the presentation, so you can see the details behind it.
Thank you.
So the big item that we kind of wanted to go over is the U-6187, the Baltimore Road extension. I'm going to go backwards. This is just to let you know how the project has kind of developed. We originally explored 4 alternatives, 40 on the right, Baltimore Road, you can see that 158 kind of splitting the screen there. December the 7th, late last year, we selected the third alternate, highlighted in the pink right there. We'll connect 158 to 40. We are in the 25% design phase of this project. Had the public meeting in November 22, finalized our alignment. As I mentioned, hydraulic design underway. Estimated right-of-way acquisition date of May 31st of 2024. So right-of-way start date, when we'll start acquiring right-of-way for this project, is end of May 24. Anticipated let is June of 25, and our latest construction budget for this project is $30 million. So it'll include, obviously, a new interchange at 40. Expect a 3-year construction duration for this project. Good thing is some of it's new location, so you know, hope to minimize traffic impacts as much as possible. We did include from the 25% plans. You know, I will say these are subject to change as you know, our traffic data and everything comes in. Here are a couple of the typicals of what we would look at for that project. The bridge section along the top. 16-foot median, 2 12-foot travel lanes, and then our typical for the Baltimore Road extension, which is you know, 12-foot lanes and our shoulders.
For the benefit of information, can you give us some reasons why you chose that particular path?
I know there was the environmental assessment was big in it. There's a lot of wetland areas throughout that project. I know when I was in the previous role, we did a lot of surveying work for that. I know there was an environmental component to that.
That actually was the biggest reason between stream impacts and wetland impacts. The overall impacts were less with alternative number 3 than the other.
Because of course, just by the visual, it looks like it's not the quickest way from point A to point B.
What we did find out is there's no great location to put an interchange in this part of Interstate 40, so we had to weave our way through there to minimize those impacts, and this alternative does that.
How much, one quick question, I've got some other questions later, but I don't want to get off on this too much, how much widening are you going to be doing of 158 to around? I kind of tried to read the maps, but just trying to follow how much, you're going to widen in that general area, or is it just going to be negligible kind of?
There will be widening on 158. If on our follow-up, if I could provide that plan sheet, I think it would really answer that question. There will be an element of widening, but I think that would be a good visual that I could provide the group to really see kind of those impacts.
And basically, that widening would be limited to left and right turn lanes. There is a signal proposed for the US 158 intersection as well.
Any other questions?
I want to ask some questions about this, but I want to let y'all get through with the bulk of your program before, so.
We're happy to answer the questions right now. We're fine.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, okay. I happen to live there, so I understand the topography in that area probably better than anybody sitting in this room. My question is twofold. First question is, I know no DOT's role is not determining development as such, but is this just looked at as a project for ingress and egress to the interstate? Or does it open it up for development because I think some of the pitch of this whole thing has been that it was just to alleviate traffic. And I know things can develop, but how does DOT see that project?
Well, you are correct in that the main purpose of this project was to provide a more direct access from the Baltimore Road area to Interstate 40. However, economic development was one of the components that we looked at for our purpose and need of this project.
The second part of my question is basically what topographical issues, but I know the wetlands can be an issue, but topographically, I know that I've measured in a couple spots down there, the creek, and there's like 125 feet of fall and so forth. And how will they impact how we potentially develop that area? Will they have a major impact with the creek bottoms and all that kind of stuff?
Obviously, the majority of the hydraulic issues are as you get closer to the interstate. Lots of pipes, culverts that'll be installed as part of that, and pretty significant fills as you build that road up to be able to get over the interstate. More of the direct access would be closer as you get closer into the US 158 area. So those are the things that the property owners or developers, if they come along on each side of it, will have to look at the topo to see where's the best location for access. This is not a controlled access roadway, so obviously they would just work with DOT as where's the safest and most logical location for any access points to be along this route.
But do you see any areas specifically that would be hard to do anything with, or just mainly that down there at the, creek bottom areas and stuff?
Yes, sir. As I said, the hardest area to develop is going to be in the area of the interchange and just to, I guess, would be the south of that area. But you quickly come back up to more natural ground in terms of accessing the new roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, guys?
Well, just on the Baltimore Road side there, how far, are you going to 3-lane that, or 4-lane that, or just widen it, or what exactly?
The left side?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, it will, yes. It is, and you can vaguely see it, on the plan. But yes, there will be widening for a right turn lane on Baltimore to 158. So there will be an element of widening on Baltimore as well. And like I said, I can provide the 25% plan so you can kind of zoom in and see specifics.
Thank you.
So moving forward, of course, all of you are probably aware that the Board of Transportation approved, a few months ago, approved our new version of the State Transportation Improvement Program, basically covers the years 2024 to 2033. The Strategic Transportation Investments Law basically says we start over immediately, looking at our next version of the TIP, and we have done that. Philip Craver is with us. He is our Division Corridor Development Engineer who works directly with the MPOs and the RPOs specifically for developing new projects to be submitted for prioritization. All of you know that funding is always an issue in DOT, but we want to give these projects the best possible opportunity to be funded and scored. So we have a list of projects that I've got here. The first slide that you see here shows several projects. The first one, of course, the widening of US 158 from Baltimore Road to Highway 801. And it's basically widening the two-lane road to a three-lane cross-section with curb and gutter bike lanes and sidewalk. I've had folks ask why we weren't doing it a four-lane road, and quite simply, the traffic volumes do not support a four-lane road, but obviously a three-lane section, center turn lane, is more appropriate for that area. So that is one of the projects, $18.5 million. You see number 2 here, which is the improvement of Farmington Road from the roundabout that we just talked about earlier up to SR 1435 or Pudding Ridge Road. That is widening the existing two-lane road with a center turn lane there as well with additional paved shoulders. That's about a 2.3-mile road estimated at nearly $23 million as well. The purpose of that project is because that's where we're seeing a lot of development, and we anticipate that traffic volumes will continue to grow on that section of Farmington Road. A couple of different projects on Highway 801. The first one, which is sorely needed, from Oak Valley north to the US 158 intersection, widening that road to multi-lanes. Obviously, all of the development that we see in the Bermuda Run area and south. This project is just short of 2 miles and estimated to cost $42 million. There are other areas of 801 that we'll look at in the future moving south, but this is the one that desperately needs to be widened now, particularly in your morning and afternoon peak hours. Another section of 801 from Yadkin Valley Road, just to the north of the Interstate 40 interchange, to 158, widening to multi-lane roadway with bike lanes and sidewalks there as well. Oak Valley is 2 intersections, so we're talking about the northern intersection there of Oak Valley. It's about 1.82, excuse me, it's about 1.9 miles, to widen that section as well. Now, from 801, from Yadkin Valley north to Redland, I got confused just a moment ago, but widening that 2-lane roadway with a center turn lane with curb and gutter and bike lanes for that nearly 2-mile segment of roadway, about $25 million. Again, the traffic volumes are not adequate enough for a multi-lane road, but definitely for the 3-lane section through there. US 158 intersection at 801. This is a standalone project that the division wanted to submit. This overlaps with 2 projects, the 801 project headed north to Oak Valley, and also the widening of US 158. All 3 of those projects sort of encompass this, but that intersection, as you all know, needs improvement desperately. So we wanted to submit that as a separate project just in case one of the other projects did not get scored, and hopefully this one will still rise to the level of being able to score that as well. It's about a $6 million project. And then US 601 from the US 64 intersection to Madison Road, widening that to a multi-lane roadway with curb and gutter sidewalks and a raised median. approximately 29, just short of $30 million. That one's being submitted by the Northwest Piedmont RPO. Then rounding out the rest of the projects, another section of US 158 from Bermuda Run to Louisville Clemens Road in Forsyth County in Clemens. That one is basically improving that to a 3-lane section. The area from Harper Road to the county line is already multi-lanes. We will be doing a road diet through there to provide some better movement to allow for better accommodation of bike and pedestrian movements there as well. That's a $21 million project. US 61, this is a bike ped project. US 61 or Yadkinville Road from Valley Road to the Senior Center, about a $500,000, a little less than $500,000 project to construct a sidewalk on the north side of Yadkinville Road, Wilkesboro Street, and Maroney Street here locally. Another bike ped project, 601 South Salisbury Street from Rollingwood Drive near Hardee's to the existing sidewalk on South Salisbury Street. Again, constructing a 5-foot sidewalk on the west side of US 601. About $1 million project there for about a mile of sidewalk. Salisbury Street, improving Salisbury Street with a multi-use path from CPP Global or on Salisbury Street to the Duke Street intersection. Again, that is a multi-use path, about 2 miles of that. And lastly is this is a regional project that covers a multitude of areas, but the Winston-Salem MPO is looking at a passenger service from Winston-Salem to Charlotte. This is again a big regional project that has that is more of a long-term project. We are probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon, but there's a couple of projects that the Winston area and the Triad are looking at, from Winston south to Salisbury and Winston to the east, going to Greensboro, headed to Raleigh as well. So all totaled, at least the ones we have cost estimates on, it's about $166 million worth of new projects. This is not does not include the committed projects that are already in the TIP. So those are a lot of good potential projects. We work very closely with the folks in the RPO, the MPO, of course, locally here as well, to come up with that list of really good projects and sorely needed projects in many areas. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we will be able to see some of these projects funded in the next version of the TIP. Any questions before I move on?
I have a question, Pat.
Yes, ma'am.
The project to add the double left turning lanes at 158 and
Yes, ma'am.
801. So, to me, the Baltimore Road extension project should take care of that more so, wouldn't you think?
Well, as you know, the traffic is incredibly heavy on that now. We do anticipate that once we put in Baltimore Road, it will take some of that load off the intersection. Not enough to where we can back off on the number of those turn lanes, because we feel like, based on our traffic impact studies, that will still be needed even with the Baltimore project in place. Very good question. Still a lot of folks, we do anticipate it will reduce the number of trucks substantially, but there's still a lot of folks that use that coming from the west. Obviously, headed north on 801 is a big one, but our numbers still show that those double lanes are still needed.
It's probably going to affect some business owners right there.
It certainly could. Obviously, when we get into this, if this project is funded, we are obviously going to do everything we can to minimize those right-of-way impacts. Very similar to what we're doing with the right turn lane that we're building right now, just trying to get only what we need to do that. But there will likely be some impacts to businesses through there. Great questions. Yes, sir.
I have one I want to ask. I know when they installed the Idols Road extension to 158, that was told or put on the computer that somewhere in the future, the Idols Road would cross the river there where the trestle is and come on to Advance and hook up with Canatzer Road. I don't see that addressed anywhere on any of this. Is that so far into the future
That is a very good question. Number one, you're correct. It is not on this list of projects that are going to be submitted. That would be considered a long-term project, and I believe that is a question for our comprehensive transportation plan, correct, Philip? Okay. So that was the first thing, in getting that on the comprehensive transportation plan or our long-range plan. That is something that could be submitted by the Winston-Salem MPO or by Davie County as well. But that is one that I believe would help provide a lot of good connectivity. It will be an expensive project, obviously, putting a bridge over the river, but one that I think with all the development, particularly in that area of Davie County, Bermuda Run, and that would probably have tremendous benefits.
Certainly, I know now we have 5 bridges across into Rowan County,
Yes.
and we only have 3 across into Forsyth.
Yes, sir.
And Davidson County.
That is correct.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that would be a tremendous help.
Very much so. Thank you for bringing that one up. Any other questions before I move on quickly? Okay.
Pat, before you move on.
Yes.
Can you just reiterate that these projects are being proposed? These are not projects that are funded, that you're already working on?
Yes, these are projects that are being advanced to compete for funding, if you will, in the next version of the Transportation Improvement Program, which will cover the years 2026 through 2035. You know, we're looking well out into the future, but we start this far in advance to get those projects in. The steps that we will go through, we submit these projects, they will have an initial quantitative score based on several different things, from benefits, safety and benefits, operational congestion reduction, those type things, to give us an initial score, and we will use that in the RPO, the MPOs, to determine which of those projects we feel have a good chance of rising to the level of being funded, so we can determine where we all want to put our local input points on these projects. Those are limited, so we want to make sure that we focus on those projects that actually have a good chance of being funded. And we will work with you all very closely once we get those quantitative scores on the regional level, and then, of course, on the division level projects as well. You get 2 opportunities to put your points on those projects. Okay? STI is a great process. We've been in it since 2013, and it's worked very well for Davie County as well, I might add. So it's one of the best things that we've had in North Carolina. Okay? So let me give you just a quick primer on transportation funding, because you all will be very much involved with that. Here's my division slide again. You know that. You've seen this. These are all the metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, and rural planning organizations that we work with and play a role in those projects that are funded, ultimately funded in NCDOT. The funding, a lot of people do not understand where our funding comes from. It's very simple in North Carolina. We've been a user-pays state for decades. The bottom line is, state funding accounts for about 73% of our total budget in North Carolina, and federal funding is about 27%. In many states, those numbers are reversed. They put most of their eggs in the federal basket and put very little state money in their program. North Carolina decided years ago, primarily in 1989 with the Highway Trust Fund, to put a significant portion of state revenues derived mainly from the fuels tax into transportation, both in maintenance and operations and our capital program with our new projects. You see the breakdown here with our state funding. Basically 50% of it comes from the motor fuels tax. Highway use tax is about 25%, and then 21% in DMV fees. And then what began last year, the legislature helps us out with dedicating a portion of the sales tax to transportation. That has never been done before in North Carolina, so that is a big deal that added ultimately about $650 million of additional funding in North Carolina. So I've got a slide here that talks about that. What they did was look at the services and sales on items related specifically to transportation. You see a list here where we talk about motorcycle, bicycle dealers, service stations, auto supply stores, and the like. It's phased in over about 3 years. Last fiscal year, it was 2%, which represented $200 million. The majority of that money went to maintenance and operations. This year, it raises to 4%, which is about $400 million, 25% maintenance operations, 75% to construction or the larger projects. And then the following fiscal year and beyond, it will be 6% of the state sales tax, and 75% of that will go to our capital program, 25% will go to the maintenance and operations. So this is a big deal that really helped us dig out of the hole from the COVID funding reduction where, when people weren't driving, they weren't paying sales tax or gas tax. So our numbers went down significantly. Unfortunately, you all know what happened since then. Inflation has just killed us. It's killed all of us on our buying power. So this helped us not get any further in the hole, but we still need additional revenues in order to be able to do some of these other projects that we were talking about. So I wanted to just put that out to you. We think about it in the future. Not only is inflation one of our biggest issues, obviously, you all know electric vehicles are becoming more and more prevalent. That is great for the environment. Problem is they don't buy a lot of gas. So if they don't buy gas, you're not paying the gasoline tax. They do have a fee that they pay, but it doesn't typically cover the same amount. So they're looking at it in the legislature and the Board of Transportation, and how do we come up with a more sustainable revenue source for transportation. Aside from electric vehicles, the fact that our gasoline-powered vehicles are getting much better mileage. So the end result is we're having less impact in our gasoline tax. So we've got to find a better way to fund transportation. Just for your information, I threw a couple of future transportation needs that quite honestly are not even being talked about right now. At some point in the future, from 10 to 20 years in the future, we're probably going to need to look at widening Interstate 40 from Bermuda Run to Moxville at a minimum. You go out there certain times a day, you say it needs it now. I agree with you. The Moxville bypass is one that we've been talking about for 2 decades. That project is not on our radar right now, so something that we need to be talking about here in the Moxville area. And then, of course, as I talked about earlier, the widening of 801 in Bermuda Run. So went through all that very, very quickly, but more than willing to take any additional questions you have. You have our contact information here for your benefit.
Any questions?
No, but I do have one comment. I've worked around Pat for many years, and
I've been here for many years.
so have I. Certainly appreciate the wonderful job that your division has done and you yourself have done.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have got staff and a team that is second to none, and I will tell you that is why we're all successful. And then not to downplay the partnerships that we have with folks like Davie County, Bermuda Run, and every municipality and county government in Division 9. Those relationships and partnerships are what makes it work. So thank you all for everything that you do as well.
I concur with Richard's comment and also want to extend that to Philip. And Philip and Pat, both of you, anytime I have reached out, you have immediately answered my questions and given me information. I thank you very much because I know y'all are very busy. But
That's why we're here. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Anything else?
Good to go.
Thank you, sir.
We're available to come back anytime. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll pick up in our presentation. From this point on, you're going to get a combination of me and Mr. Johnny Easter to go through the presentation. I do want to inform you all as commissioners, in your notebooks, there is a manila tab towards the back. If you would turn to that and take out the papers that are behind that tab, What Mr. Easter and I have done is provided you with kind of a cheat sheet as we move through the presentation. We are going to get a little bit technical in some of our aspects, so we thought it might be good for you to have this paper to go along with it if you want to take any additional notes of what we go over on top of the presentation that you have in your binder. So it kind of flows with the presentation. It's not necessarily worded by slides, but I think you'll be able to see where we are and to keep up. I just want to point out that for the sake of the public, that we are recording this. It's not being live streamed, but it will be available for future use just in case anybody wants to watch this to see specifically what we talk about. Just want to make sure everybody in the public knows that our discussion today is primarily involving the zoning area that the county has direct control over within the municipal limits of Bermuda Run, Moxville, and Coolamy, and their ETJ. They have more of a direct conversation when it comes to growth and development. Obviously, we do have some say in utilities, so just want to make sure that that's clear to the public as we move through our discussion today. From a rhetorical standpoint, when it comes to growth and development, basically we see growth in three areas, from the industrial side, the business commercial side, and the residential side. And I know a lot of times we have a lot of people that have a lot of questions about what is growth and development, whether it's an expansion of what we already have, or in a lot of cases for us at the county level, it deals directly with rezoning. So just want to know that there's different definitions of growth and development depending on your situation, where you live, what's across from you. But we're going to try to tackle a couple of issues that we have seen here. Me and Mr. Easter have the unique ability that we've been here about a year, and we've picked up a lot of conversations and a lot of ins and outs. I know you all have been here way longer when it comes to growth and development, but we are going to tackle some of the things that we've seen here recently. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Easter and let him give his part of the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to have hopefully some beneficial discussions today. So I'm going to get started with kind of where we're at and where we're going. Okay? So currently, I pulled these terms from the North Carolina Office of State Bureau of Management. As it states right now, if you want to look at the projected growth here in Davie County, currently we stand at about 44,000 people. So if you look at this in the green projected growth, we're looking at 2050, within the next 25 years or so, to reach approximately right around 60,000 people in population. And during my research, I went to different I guess, there were different projections growth, some as high as upwards of 75,000 people in population-wise here in Davie County, depending on what the source is. So, but this is the North Carolina Office of State Bureau of Management. We're looking at approximately right around 60,000 people in population. So pulled these just to kind of also to look at where we're at going, where we've been to. This came from the Cato Institute. In North Carolina, if you look at average home price adjusted for inflation, the average selling price of North Carolina home has risen by $176,000 since 1975. Okay? And currently what we've got here is also, if you look at the population's increase here in North Carolina, the population is increasing on average about 10% over the past 10-year period. Projections are increasing of that. But with housing units, the development are less than that. So we're 9%. So population is increasing, but the construction of housing it's not able to keep up with population growth. So here in Davie County, I want to thank one of my Vice Chair of the Planning Board, Ellen Grubbs, for helping me provide some of this information. These are current, as of July 23rd, these are real estate sales stats here in Davie County. Okay, these came from Davie County. So the average sale price of a home in Davie County was $296,000 here in Davie County. So you might as well say that's $300,000. The average sale price in Davie County was here. So if you want to look at the period over here from 2021 to 2023, it's fluctuated over time. But if you average those out over that past 5-year period, the average sale price is right around $300,000 here in Davie County. As of July 2023, there's 80 homes for sale in Davie County. Estimated housing units here in the county are right around 20,000. So 80 houses are currently for sale. So if you kind of want to break these down, the average listing prices over that same period of time, over from August 21 to July 2023, it fluctuates. Some low months in there are right around about 25 to 30. High months are about 125, but that breaks down about the average. Anytime you're going to be listing for houses for sale here in Davie County is right around 75 houses are listed for sale. Same thing with the average price of a selling home around here. We hit peaks. If you look at a couple of months out there, the peaks were over $350,000. Some were as little as about $225. But if you look at that period of time, it's going to be right around $300,000 is about the average selling price of a home here in Davie County. So just looking at where we've been since August 2021 to April of 2023, there's been about 500 acres here in Davie County that have been rezoned for general industrial. So we're looking at bringing a substantial amount of jobs coming here in Davie County over that period of time. How many? Don't know, but these are just the general rezonings that we've dealt with over that couple of year period, about 500 acres. If you want to look at the current zoning districts here throughout the county, if you want to look at the overwhelming majority, 98% of the unincorporated areas here in the county are RA or R20. Those are more the residential type zonings. So if you look at that, the majority of the rezoning that we do have in here is kind of more of a residential type area. So over the past year or so, and County Manager Barnett and I have had lots of discussions through various developers, through the public, through the rezonings, through everything. And these are some of the concerns that keep coming up time after time and after time. We just got way too much growth going on here in Davie County. We just, there's really not a whole heck of a lot of workforce housing that we have here. We need to do everything we can to maintain a small town feel. We just need to conserve farmland and green space. And I guess we know what we want, but we don't know what we don't want. We need to really target growth and development in areas of the county that we want. We just don't have any housing inventory. There's just nothing out there to buy. We need to do everything we can for the preservation of our rural heritage. And we have a lot of people out there that tend to take advantage of the spirit of the subdivision ordinance. So here's some solutions and some options. So based upon those, these are just some, these specifically look at some of the issues that have been stated. So a couple of things that we've come up with is establish new overlay zoning districts, define plan industrial business development, establish a rural conservation development, and look at some of the subdivision ordinances revisions. So first thing we're going to look at is some of the overlay districts. So if you look at a map, what do I do? How do I get this? My pointer. So if you look at this is a map out of our 2019 land use plan. This is some of the areas, and what I really want to draw attention to is the purple and the red areas. Those areas are designated in the 2019 land use plan as the commercial, industrial, more a business type use. So if you want to look at those areas, that's where we have targeted through the 2019 land use plan, where we want to establish all the industrial and land use. But if you also look at the colors green and everything, that's more the residential type. So those are the areas that are targeted up Interstate 40, 158. That general area is located. That's what we have targeted in the land use plan for residential and commercial use. So by establishing new overlay districts or districts, I think these are the areas that we would be addressing about the too much growth. I think it gives us the ability to maintain a small town feel. We could conserve farmland and green space. We could target growth and development. We could do everything we can for the preservation of our rural heritage. So an overlay district is established in a defined area whose geographic coverage shall encompass the rapidly growing sections of the county. It is intended to supplement rather than replace the underlying zoning in this defined area. It does not address elements such as use or intensity, which are controlled by the underlying zoning. Rather, it addresses design elements such as landscape, buffering, building facade, color, access points, etc. So this is what we could do as a group and really target specific areas. Adopt overlay districts in those areas that we could use to utilize any kind of design elements or any kind of overlay districts or help have development in business look the way we want it to look.
Can I ask you a question about
Absolutely.
that? We have taken on more of an approach of looking at potential zoning issues, not as general zoning, but more conditional zoning, so
Correct.
that we can handle them on individual basis.
Correct.
For instance.
Correct.
How would implementing this, because many of the characteristics that you're talking about right here, we deal with in conditional zoning requests. What's the difference? I mean, why
So-
would we need to?
So going into this, if we go in and we start an overlay district, it could be made up of pretty much whatever design criteria. We know when the potential developer comes in this area, that there are specific requirements that they're going to have to meet prior to coming in that rezoning. So during the discussion, the developer comes in and say, okay, if I develop in this area, this is a targeted growth area, these are the design criteria or the added supplemental, if you will, requirements to whatever my development, whatever my project is going to be. So they can be done on the front end if they come in and they don't have a specific use intended.
So that allows them then to predetermine some of the issues and
Correct,
characteristics
correct.
that we might address instead
Correct.
of handling them on a
Correct.
per zoning, in a per zoning way.
Correct. So if a developer comes in and has a specific piece of property that has been identified in an overlay district, can meet whatever it is, they're going to know about that up front. So a lot of those issues could potentially be addressed prior to the rezoning process. Yeah. Any other questions with that?
Yes, I have one. Is this going to leave us with like a cookie cutter development where everything looks the same and the same color?
Well, it gives us the ability to put in it whatever we want it to look like. We could address concerns. It's just, those are options. We don't have to do those. You could put in it, I know we have a Coolamy overlay district and we have a quality design overlay district. We currently have some overlay districts here in the county. But we could add anything to it up front that we want to. Increase buffering, increase green space, sidewalks, recreational uses. We could add those and establish them in it. So it could be whatever we want it to make it to be.
Would there be any individual preference allowed?
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's a spectrum. It would definitely be a spectrum. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some municipalities have it. They'll have earth tone colors only. I mean, there's various when it comes to things. For for building facades, half of it can be has to be rock or brick or stucco. So those are some of the elements that you kind of look at that are out there. But it could be whatever we want it to be. That is an option.
I just don't feel like we want our county to look the same.
Right.
Across the river
Sure.
bridge to the other river bridge. Not be able to tell which exit to go off of because all of them look alike.
So is the overlay district, it's a right, but it's not, it's not an absolute.
No. Once you establish in that, and we could say wherever it is. And you could establish it wherever you want to. So if we identify future growth, and we say the Baltimore, that was discussed here. So if we say, hey, look, we're gonna look ahead. Any development in the Baltimore Road area, we would, through GIS, would establish an overlay district over that, and any future development in there would have to meet the specific standards that we set aside for them. So we could pick whatever area we want to and establish an overlay district if we wanted to do that.
On that map right there, do you have any idea between the dark green and the light green, the conservation and the rural residential, what that percentage is?
It's right around 98%. The majority of those in those areas are RA or R20.
So 98% of that map is, the green is 98% of that map?
Well, it's probably more 80, but I'm talking existing zoning for property in here is RA and R20.
Okay.
Any other questions? We move on to the next one.
I was looking at the plan, the comprehensive plan, and one of the things jumped out at me about the industrial, somewhere, when you add in what you said, 500, and I'm not sure what we had as the comprehensive plan was being developed, but aren't we, if you look at pages 71 through 74, aren't we kind of pretty much at the prescribed amount? I think it said something like 600 acres of industrial or something along those lines was recommended. And I'm not trying to pick and choose what part of the plan we hold to, but are we getting pretty close on that to where we've got to be really choosy as to what else we add if we go by that plan? Because there's some numbers down there like 600 acres, something like that, if you look on those pages. And I think we're kind of around that. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that out there.
We didn't get the exact acreage that you're talking to. I guess the short answer to your question is probably yes. We're probably a lot closer to that projected amount from 2019 than we are away from it.
Well, and certainly, we're going to have more in-depth discussions as we move along with this, even if we even consider overlay districts. I concur with Richard on this. I tell you, I just got back from a place in South Carolina that evidently is an overlay district because you can't even find a gas station. Because everything's covered with trees and everything's, they don't allow any signs. If they are, my grandson, who's about 11 years old, he's the same height of their signs. So I think we just have to be careful with that. We want to strike a balance, but, I like Richard's description as a cookie cutter. We don't want to.
A recent trip to Cary showed the same thing.
Any other questions about the overlay districts? Move on to the next one. So something else we can look at is a planned industrial business development. This would address too much growth, the ability to maintain a small town feel, concern farmland and green space. Another addresses what we want and what we don't want. Targeted growth and development, and doing everything we can for the preservation of our rural heritage. So what this would entail is a planned development consisting of more than 5 acres and more than one structure. Okay, primarily of industrial uses, retail service, office space, and/or recreational uses to accommodate the general public. A planned development shall require the submittal of a site plan as well as a preliminary subdivision plat in accordance with the subdivision regulations. The final subdivision plan and site plan may require approval of the Board of County Commissioners and recorded for any phase of the development prior to the issuance of any zoning or building permits to construct any principal buildings within the development. Final subdivision plats shall meet the requirement of the subdivision regulations. Any redivision of approved and platted lots within the planned development is subject to plat review and approval. Building setbacks may be reduced within the planned development to allow for 0 lot line buildings. All required minimum setbacks shall be maintained from a defined outer boundary of the planned development as shown on the site plan and subdivision plan. Individual out parcels and lease lots for freestanding individual principal uses shall maintain the building setbacks within the planned development of the zoning district where the planned development is located. Front, side, rear yards shall be established by the site plan and shown all subdivision plats for each lot within the development. Shared parking shall be permitted within the development. Appropriate legal documents, example, covenants, conditions, restrictions, and the like, establishing the shared use and access for parking, loading, and driveways shall be submitted with the final subdivision plat. This one is what I want you to draw your attention to. Planned developments shall be subject to review and approval by the Board of County Commissioners at the discretion of the planning director and the county manager. All utility, road, and site infrastructure plans shall be reviewed by the appropriate staff to determine consistency with the adopted policies and future plans of the county. Site improvements are responsible of the developer unless the county finds it in its best interest to provide any portion of necessary improvements. Planned development shall consist of a minimum of 5 acres in contiguous land not separated by existing public streets or public bodies of water. All other applicable zoning requirements shall apply within the development. All right, so in essence, what this is addressing is you have a proposed developer that comes in and has, I've got 100 acres out there, right? And I'm going to develop this property. I want to have it rezoned for highway business or rezoned for industrial. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm just looking through this. Once I go through DEQ, once I go through everything else, I'll come up with a site plan. As it's now, I'm really hard to tell you what a conceptual drawing is going to look like. I can show you this gorgeous conceptual drawing, right? I can put whatever you want. I can put water slides in it and bike trails and all these wonderful things. But once it comes to fruition and you go through just a regular non-conditional rezoning, they're not bound by that site plan, okay? So in essence, what this would create is if a developer comes in and has not an idea of what they want to do, they want to do industrial property with it. Once it gets rezoned, once it starts the construction, and once they start dealing with the permits, they would have to submit a site plan to the planning department. The planning director would then discuss it with the county manager, and at that time, if the size, the complexity of the lot would have to be submitted to this board, and this board would have to sign off on the final site plan. And they would be bound by that. So in the past, where we've had conceptual drawings, where we've asked the developer, just show me what it might look like. They're not bound by that, because we can't approve it on that. But this, once they submit the final site plan, it would have to be approved and go through the approval process of this board. So if there was addresses, hey, I want to address some of the buffering requirements. I want to address some of the site, some of the setbacks. At that time, this board would have to sign off on the final site plan. Questions?
Would this be akin to what we didn't have at, say, Farmington Road of like, they showed some conceptual drawings, but some of the locations or close proximity to the road seems to be different than what we expect.
Correct.
This help to alleviate
This
that?
would help. So we would be approving the site plan based upon the final, once they go through DEQ, once they go through any other agencies to get, and we can get as close to it as we possibly can, but any of those, what was shown there, whatever would be submitted for approval, this board would have to approve it, and they would be bound by that.
What would happen in the event where, say, you ran into poor soil that would not support footings in a building?
There would be, from that time, any changes, and we could write that in. So if it's 10% or less than changes with that, then we would be okay. But if it constituted more changes, they would have to resubmit, and then we could go back for this board for approval. So there would be something built in it to allow, sure, we're going to have changes over time, but in the grand scope and look at things, then we could bound them and hold them by what the final approved site plan would be.
Can you think of any drawback to that? You know, I mean, we want to kind of control the narrative here, but is there, any drawback to a business wanting to build something here?
I don't,
or anything? anything.
I don't think we do technical review on big, on big projects anyway. But I think this gives the ability going forward for a prospective developer saying, hey, look, I don't know what it's going to look like. We can make this conceptual drawing look great and it's submitted here and people can't get that out of their mind. They think that was presented, that's what it's going to look like. This would give the ability to say, hey, look, for this board to say, once it starts construction, once it gets to that phase of permitting phase, we're going to know what the site plan is going to look like at that time, and they are bound by that site plan. It's a little bit, now, some of the conditional rezonings, absolutely, those can be addressed doing a conditional rezoning. But if we have a substantial development and prospective developer wants to come in and says, I don't know what it's going to look like. I just know I'm going to have a bunch of buildings here. I don't know what it's going to look like. And they're not wanting to go through that process, this would catch it on the back end. I think this would work better catching things on the back end. So there's going to be open transparency, and we're going to approve it. We're going to hold them to it by what they said that was going to be submitted and what was going to be constructed.
Do you find that what you're suggesting works in other areas that are growing fairly, that are growing at a pretty good pace?
I don't know. I've taken this. This is currently, something similar to this is currently in our zoning ordinance, and I've kind of tweaked it. One thing I've added to it is allow the commissioners to have final say-so on it. So some of these standards are currently in there. I don't know how this will affect most of them, but most of the developers are used to going through a TRC. A lot of this, we can adjust with this, how you want approval. If it goes through the consent agenda, if you look at it and go, okay, it looks good, it's okay, and if we have any, we can address them on that end.
Would things be this rigorous in some other counties?
No, I'm sure they are. Yes, yeah.
Is there any, I'm sure there was thought, but 5 acres is pretty small. Is there any thought to one size fits all?
Everything is up for debate. That 5 acres was in there, 10 acres, and some of these things with addressing. So if I've got 30 acres out there, and I'm a gentleman who's wanting to, or gentlelady who's wanting to build whatever, it's already currently rezoned, and it's a repair shop or something that we don't fits the intent, they're not going to go through this process. The county manager and the planning director will discuss it. This is more designed to is for the major developments, for the unknown, the spec buildings, the strip malls, the stuff that we don't know what's going to get there. When that rezone of that 50 acres, 10 acres, they don't really know what it's going to look like. We're going to try to address those up front during the process.
And this is a presentation.
Correct.
This isn't even a draft.
No.
We're going to have input, and so
Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
in mind tweaks you want to make.
Oh, absolutely.
Or if we're going to even move forward with this. These are just ideas that we've
Correct.
asked Mr. Easter and Brian to work on so that we can have a kind of a starting off point to have discussions about all this.
And these are directly targeted at some of the concerns that I've heard from the county, from developers, from citizens, from various boards. Just, hey, these are some of the concerns. How can we address these concerns? And these are some ideas to specifically address those concerns.
But I think it's a valid point when you look at 5 acres is to realize that, according to how you set something up there, that's, 5 acres is 200 and some square feet. So you can get a pretty big building on 5 acres if you're allowed to.
Right, correct.
So,
Other questions? Proceed.
Okay. All right. So the next thing we're looking at, and this is going to address some of the residential concerns. Rural conservation development, or an RCD. This will address there's no workforce housing here. We need to do everything we can to maintain a small town feel. Concern farmland and green space. There's really just no housing inventory around here. We need to do everything we can for the preservation of our rural heritage. So, a rural conservation development, the purpose of this development is to preserve the rural community character, sometimes lost in conventional development approaches, by allowing greater flexibility and creativity in the design and development with clustering lots while preserving open space and maintaining our rural heritage. So this is a concept that is throughout the state, throughout the nation. Okay, so here's an example. So what they're looking to do, if we can point this, and I don't know, my pointer won't show up, so apologize for that. So they take a piece of property, smaller lot size, and cluster them either on the perimeter around it and situate it where they can maintain green space throughout it, i.e., that's where the septic tank systems are going to be located. Smaller lots, townhomes in this general area to maintain preservation, more green space, recreation areas, to be able to do a development that doesn't fall within the conventional confines of what we currently have here in Davie County. So this is a real-world example from a neighboring county. This is on about 9 acres, 10 acres, and what they've done is they built townhomes in this area. They're all on septic tank system. They're all on public water. They're able to build these and still set it in a rural look, but yet offset and still maintaining the hometown, a small town feel and establishing green areas. This is an example of what one of the houses look like, one of the dwellings looks like in this area. So
Let me ask you real quick, what's the typical size of one of those developments over? I mean, like if you had to pick, I mean, is that similar? Is that a small example? How big?
it would be a small example. This would be a typical example. Probably we're looking at, depending on the size and scope. I've talked to a couple of developers that are looking to implement these things in other counties around here. But it just depends on the size, and we'll get to some of the discussion with that here in a sample. So what the purpose of this is to do is to preserve areas of the county with productive soils for continual agricultural uses, to minimize site disturbance and erosion through the retention of existing vegetation and avoid development on steep slopes, to preserve open land, including those areas containing unique and sensitive features such as natural areas, wildlife habitat, steep slopes, streams, wetlands, and floodplains, to preserve scenic views and elements of the county's rural character, to minimize perceived density by minimizing views of new development from existing roads and existing developments, to provide the active and passive recreational needs of the residents, to provide greater efficiency in the siting of services and infrastructure by reducing road length, utility extensions, and the amount of impervious surfaces for development, to create compact neighborhoods accessible to open space amenities. Okay, this development, if adopted, shall be allowed as a conditional and be permitted by right in zoning uses in RA, R20, R8, and R12. As it currently stands right now, the only 98% of the county is RA and R20, okay? The only thing that you can do by right is a single-family dwelling or a mobile home. That's it. No duplexes, no nothing. That's the only thing in R. So 98% of the county that we have here, the only thing that you can construct would be a single-family dwelling.
And unless there's sewer there, we're stuck with a 30,000 square foot lot size.
30 or 40,000, depending on if we have water or not. 30 or 40,000 would be the minimum lot size. Minimum size for an RCD shall be located on a site containing at least 5 contiguous acres. So this is for your 5 acres, the minimum lot size. Up again, it's up for interpretation. If you want to do this development, you have to have at least 5 acres. Septic system repair areas and water systems may be in common areas, provided that appropriate measures are taken to ensure maintenance through a homeowners association. System designs must be attained and approved from the Davie County Environmental Health Department. Design lots and density requirements in RCD shall be exempt from the minimum lot size requirements and side property line setbacks of the Davie County subdivision zoning ordinance, except for those within a watershed area and outstanding resource watershed area, provided the development standards and other requirements herein are met. The minimum lot size requirements of RCD shall be not less than 10,000 square feet for a single-family dwelling and 15,000 square feet for a duplex, provided that the overall density of the dwelling unit shall not exceed 1 lot per acre, and provided that 25% of the total project remains in open space. Lots in RCD shall either front a private street as described in condition N above, or in common open space, which either adjoins either a public or private street as provided for the above. Subdivisions within an RCD shall be subject to the provisions and declarations of the North Carolina Unit of Ownership Act, if applicable, and such documents shall be submitted as a part of the plat review process. Applications for an RCD shall include an acceptable open space preservation plan delineating areas to remain in open space. Lot requirements. Each lot shall be subject to the lot sizes and overall density limits listed in Section D. The following criteria shall be used to determine the location of each lot. Development shall be buffered from direct view by a vegetative buffer or on an earth berm constructed to reflect the topography of the surrounding area, or located out of sight on slopes below existing ridge line. Each lot shall be located to minimize a visual impact of the development. Each lot shall not include wetlands, transition areas, or floodplains. Each lot shall not include areas with excessive slopes of greater than 40%. Roadways shall follow existing contours to minimize the extent of cuts and fills. The minimum common open space shall be contiguous with allowed breaks at roads and streets. Any questions?
I have one question on that. Each lot shall not include wetlands, transition areas, and floodplains. What becomes of those areas?
That would be the green space common area that would not be developed. So those would be set aside as that fall within that, at least that 25% of common space. You could not go in and develop those. That would have to maintain as a common space area.
Who would have ownership of that?
That would be in the tri-party agreement if it is adopted, depending on who's in it. And that would be through what we talked about. That would be subject to the North Carolina Unit Ownership Act. So which is like, almost like a homeowners association, if you will.
Now, that part about the street facing, would these be like, I'd asked you before, maybe, we want to get away from, don't want to get ahead of myself, but get away from some of this where we have these lots attached directly to roads and stuff. Would these be more, it looks like there would be a road, like, more like cul-de-sac or
Correct.
whatever off of.
What we want this to do is we want these to be somewhat hidden, okay? Through buffering, through vegetation, that they can go in, develop these with one way in. So what we do is, excuse me, the access point is this off a road. So if you look down the highway at the north over here, that's buffered. You can't really see anything in here. So what we would be intended with this is give the developer an option to go in to set this kind of in a nook, so that way it kind of falls in, gives them the ability to do duplexes if they choose to, or smaller housing units on smaller lots, but still maintaining that green space, that open field, as opposed to going in as it stands right now and, just like we said, just cutting out 30,000 square foot lots.
Now, you said something, or it said something on there about, like, to not exceed per 1 acre. Now, is that, did I read that right?
Yeah, the density requirements, we would be increasing density requirements with this. And like I said, this is all, we could look at it and we could say, hey, look, we can have X amount of lots. All this, what this is going to address, what this is going to come down to is the septic area. How much septic systems, because the majority of these are going to be on septic. It just gives the developer a different option if they choose to come in to do duplexes. And speaking with some of the contractors, as some of we've had, that option just does not exist in the county.
Are you going to address because I don't want to say too much. You're going to address that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say anything about that, but it actually, you can have more cluster of density because everybody gets obsessed about that, but in actuality, an effort to do this appears to me, and I don't want to make it look like I'm selling it, as a way to recoup green space without
Correct.
having, you kind of change the appearance, you change the packaging of
Correct.
how you do something, if you look into something.
Yeah, and it gives us, when we have a proposed developer that comes in and wants to develop single-family dwellings in the county, it gives them another option as opposed to just cutting it. And we've had conversations with some developers and graders, the cost of construction just keeps going up, keeps going up. Cost of infrastructure with curbs and gutters, roads, keeps going up and keeps going up. It just gives an option that if they choose to go this route, we can maintain green space. We can go in and we can apply some of these. I've talked to a developer that is looking to do this in some surrounding counties with some very technology advanced septic tank systems for pre-treatment systems. It just gives them an option, something that's not found in a conventional like zoning requirement in a rural area. It's just something to look at to say, hey, look, this is an option here in Davie County that we can offer you if you want to do so to address some of the issues associated with some of our lack in housing.
Didn't we, when we just, the development we just approved for, on the Hendricks property, didn't that have an issue of wetlands
Correct.
that they had to set aside?
Correct.
And they utilized that in a very effective way for green space
Yes.
within the development. So
Correct.
that kind of within the context of what you're talking about, Richard,
It
they
is.
addressed that.
It is. However, with the picture here, that doesn't even resemble rural property. That's like, you got a high-density area, then a few miles down the road, you got another high-density area. I don't know how that's preserving the rural look of the
Well,
county.
one of the things, it would not be, it would be offset. It would be buffered, not seen, and the accessibility would be through one way in. You really wouldn't see it, but it's just an option that a prospective developer would have.
And it looks way different than like those homes down on 801 that are just side by side by side by side.
Those on Fulton Road, they just
And-
put them up side by side. Barely room enough to walk between them.
I do have a question. Did they change some regulations where if you do a development in this manner where there's only one way in and out like that, what type of fire hydrant or sprinkler regulations are gonna go in there?
I think it's 47, it's road width with cul-de-sac. Our fire ordinance, we addressed that on a couple of things. It's road width, depending on how many units. I want to say that number specifically, I want to say it's right around 40. But those are the things the developer, so if they did this, they would have an entry here and an exit out. You know, part of that would still go through the technical review. We would still be looking to do fire hydrants and stuff like that. But that would all, fire code would be brought into that, yeah.
Well, and the reason I really just wanted to make sure, because if they're required to do sprinklers, I mean, that's an extreme extra.
Well,
expense.
with sprinkles, there'd be one or two family dwellings. These are still considered residential, not commercial, so there would be no sprinklers required in them.
Well, go ahead, Brent. No, go ahead.
Could we, but I mean, we could even, I mean, if we did look towards something like this, and I keep saying that like, you know, don't want anybody to take out of there that this is the definite route we're taking, but you could say that the back of one of the houses, for example, the one nearest the road there, has to be X amount from that road.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, I think it's something at least worth entertaining when we've got this issue of what you're talking about with line of stuff and with houses being built on the very front 10,000 square feet to circumvent the spirit of that, so.
Well, and I just, we will have time to debate.
Absolutely.
Okay, but I do want to say this, if I heard you correctly, the light green, right here, all that can be built right now is a single-family dwelling, and I think you mentioned a mobile home.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, if you look at the current zoning based upon, and I
But-
could go back to that, and this was, some of these numbers may change from time, and it's gonna fluctuate. But RA and R20, of the 151,000 acres we have in, if you look at that, right around 98% is just RA and R20, just permitted by right, is a single-family dwelling.
Okay. My point, though, that I think we have to think about is, if I heard you correctly,
Right.
you're talking about taking that 98% through this rural conservation development proposal and expanding the number of dwellings that could be built in
Correct.
these areas. So you're not necessarily controlling growth, you may be expanding, because at this point, we can only do single-family
Correct.
dwellings in these areas. So now you're talking about building single-family homes, but multi-units, so to
Yeah,
speak.
two, it would be one or two. It wouldn't be, it would be two, yeah.
So I just think we have to think about that, because you're, in terms of preserving the rural character of the county, we don't want necessarily 10, 15-unit housing developments popping up all over the
Correct.
county. So we'll
Correct.
just have to, I mean,
Couldn't we define like an area where this was like, there's,
Absolutely.
kind of like a outer frontier? This is, this may be appropriate for somebody like beside of me that's got 10 acres on 158, and it's pretty close to the epicenter of things that are going on, but not necessarily what we want out on Sheffield Road or.
Absolutely. It's just, it's another option when a prospective developer comes in and says, look, I've got this 100 acres and I'm going to cut these individual lots up. Say, hey, look, maybe we want to look at that to preserve open space. We're going to make you set aside that 25% could be 50%. It could be whatever number we want it to be, gives the developer options. And that's what we'd be looking to do, to address not quite, every developer that I've come to and we've talked to, the average price point over the past probably, I would say at least a dozen subdivisions are coming in. And I always ask them, what's the average cost of the house? What are you looking at? And I've heard $500,000 to $600,000. That's the majority of the houses. That's the majorities. $90,000 to $100,000 for a lot. Just once you get infrastructure put in with roads. And those are single-family dwellings. So, with all the potential jobs coming in, it's just something that we can look at in the county to address some of the housing needs of the future citizens of Davie County.
and I appreciate that.
Right.
But to clarify what Brent just said, we can define the RCD
Right.
areas. We're not taking the 80% and the 98 and
Right.
the 18% and just opening it up because
Absolutely.
of the way the
Right.
zoning is there. They're
Right.
RA or R20.
Right.
And we say we just open this up to the RCD.
Right.
We can target that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions about that? All right. So next one we're looking at is some, to address some of the concerns, subdivision ordinance revision. This would help us maintain that small town feel, conserve farmland and green space. Another thing, we know what we want, but we don't know what we don't want, or vice versa. Preservation of our rural heritage, taking advantage of the spirit of the subdivision ordinance. So as it currently, our existing subdivision ordinance, and I can go in here, in essence, what this means, so lots served by both public water and public sewer, which we don't have many of those would be R12 and R8, we don't have many of those, shall have area not less of 8,000 square feet at the width of the building line not less than 70 foot. So that's 70-foot wide lot with water and sewer. So number 2 and number 3 are the ones in the majority. So lots served by public water but not public sewer shall have an area not less than 30,000 square feet and a lot width at the building line of not less than 80 feet. So those are 80-foot lines. And lots served by neither public water, no public sewer shall have an area not less than 40,000 square feet and a lot width at the building line of not less than 100 foot. Okay? So what the proposed revision, how we'd address this, lots in a major subdivision, which is divided 2 or more lots, that are accessed by a public dedicated or maintained street shall be a minimum of 150 foot wide. Okay? So if you connect to a public dedicated or maintained street, the lot width would have to be at least 150 foot wide.
US highway, state highway,
State
whatever.
highway, yeah. So if you build a subdivision, and in that subdivision you do a road, in that road, the interior of the road, you would refer back to the minimum lot width. But if you're accessing a major publicly dedicated, not a major, a publicly dedicated or maintained street, you're going to have to be 150 foot wide. Yes, sir.
Say something now, because this has been my big agenda item, and it's been a big agenda item, not because I just came up with it, but when I campaigned, I constantly had people coming up to, how are they building these 1/3 of an acre lots? And I'm like, they can't. But what, if you go down Bailey's Chapel Road, or you go down 801, or you see people with, you see these ones with shared driveways, and it creates danger, it doesn't look good. They're only developing the front 10,000 acres, and they're just not doing anything. So it's really good for the developer, but it's not good for the appearance in the county or safety. So this is one of the things that I've heard more than anything that they want to people get rid of. So I don't, after all that I've heard, I don't want people coming out, oh, this is terrible, because to me this is a move towards a safer and a better product than what we have gotten, and we've got to address it. We can't just do it without making a change. We've got to make a change if we're going to do this. So there's plenty of that out there, and for people like Mark and I that are baseball fans, we can sit in the outfield when the kids are warming up, and we know exactly what 90 feet is. And 90 feet is between first and second when we're standing out there. So 80 feet, that's pretty doggone close when you're going at 60 miles an hour down 158 or down 801. So this is definitely something that it may not be exactly 150 when we get it all, but this is one that we need to do.
I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions on this?
Anything else?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll turn it over to,
Appreciate all the work.
yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So before I go into the comprehensive plan, any last questions on the options that Mr. Easter just went over? It's not seeming like I'm hearing any. So on the, one thing I do want to point out that I think the chairman has made pretty clear is that anything that we have suggested today as an option, it's just more of a suggestion and a recommendation, and then anything in the specifics is up for interpretation, change. So if Commissioner Shove wants to make that 150 foot, 160, and that's something that you all want to bat around and talk about, then that's an option that's available.
Or 135.
Right. So just want to let you know that everything, I mean, Commissioner Reniger mentioned the 5 acres. And our first draft of this, it was 10 acres. So if there's anything specific that you want to address that we have suggested today as part of your discussion, then we can go more in depth about that as we move forward. In terms of the comprehensive plan from 2019, I think one of the big things that the plan identified was our growth strategy map, which identified the areas of the county that were ready for development. Also within that map, not to just make it solely about development, but the map also showed the areas that we tend to conserve from a rural standpoint and an agricultural standpoint. Our plan also looked at our future land use, which you've actually seen a map of that, which identified projected areas that needed to accommodate growth. And then finally, there were a section of future development policy recommendations. There are close to 100 listed in the comprehensive plan. I know we set aside 4 hours for today, but I'm not going to go through all 100 of them as part of the presentation. I've looked at those recommendations at least from the time that I've been here, and I've made some notes that we can discuss in a future setting one-on-one if we need to. But we'd be here for weeks if we went through each one of those and wanted to discuss them. But those recommendations do look at everything from housing, transportation, land use, farm preservation, utilities, health, economic development, and quality of life. From our strategy map, again, it identifies the main areas for future growth. The map tries to provide guidance on areas in the county that accommodate housing needs, institutional and industrial growth, and commercial land use. Those were pretty much broken down into 3 areas within the comprehensive plan. We had our primary growth area, which was located adjacent to our municipal limits. This area follows, for the most part, our transportation corridors. We already have water in place. most of the sewer that we do from a public standpoint. And if it's not directly within the primary growth, there's easy access to those utilities within the primary growth. And our primary growth area were the areas that we identified at that time in 2019 as having higher density. Next to the primary growth area was the secondary. These are transitional areas that we really wanted to, at the time in 2019, focus on as subdivisions. And most of the case, again, we do have water in these areas that we've identified, but they're not going to have the sewer. They're going to be relying more on septic. And then finally, we called it at the time a rural growth area, but you could pretty much characterize it more as preserving the rural part of the county. This was going to be characterized with our traditional agricultural operations, pasture land, forestry, and open spaces. This is the map from 2019. Really what I wanted to focus on, part of our discussion today or future discussions, when we look at this particular map of our primary and secondary growth area, is there anything in particular about these different colors, primarily looking at the purple and the pinkish colors, that we need to look at changing? If you look at just the purple area, that's our primary growth area. Most of the time, your eyes are going to go right towards the center of the map, right where it has the giant 40 for Interstate 40. That's near Farmington Road that runs along Highway 158 towards Bermuda Run. There's a significant amount of primary growth area if you look outside of the town of Moxville, and the town of Moxville is ETJ. And then our secondary growth areas, you will see a significant amount when you look outside of Bermuda Run into the Advance and the Farmington area north of I-40. There's that section between Farmington Road and the town of Moxville. When you look at Cana Road, Main Church Road, Angel Road, and then on the southern part of the county, again, extending out from the primary area just north of Moxville before you get to the Farmington area. We do have some defined boundaries, but when I look at most of the growth and development that has gone on in my time here at the county, it has been primarily structured within this, which was identified as part of the comprehensive plan. What I would really like for you to take away from this is, these are the areas that we identified for some type of growth. I think with the options that we presented to you today, and I hope future discussions, that we look to be as proactive as we can to determine the level of growth that we want to see in these primary and secondary areas. I think to some extent it's going to continue to come. There are some external factors that are slowing down some development, primarily inflation. You go out and try to borrow money today, it's a whole lot more expensive than it was just a year ago, and I think that will slow down some growth. But as we move forward at this discussion, are these still the areas that we want to target? This plan was put together obviously pre-COVID in 2018 to 2017 to 2019. And we have focused primarily looking at these particular areas for growth. But if we need to change some of these colors, some of these boundaries, I think that will be open for discussion and interpretation as we move forward. On the future land use part of the comprehensive plan, we identified areas for land use to accommodate future growth. We utilized a lot of the same data that was in the growth strategy map as we look at growth, especially as we look to increase our economic development for job growth. And then we were looking for all areas that were suitable for housing. However, density, such as duplexes and multifamily, I think at the time of putting together this plan, we were still trying to push towards that primary growth area, not out into the county. And I think the only exception to that would be those secondary growth areas if transportation and utilities were available, already in place, or easy to access. So from a density standpoint, I think we were still looking to preserve as much of the future land use that was highlighted in green. I think what we've kind of thrown out to you today still allows us to do that. Still keeping that green area down to one single family residence and pushing any type of density towards those areas that we identified in our secondary and primary growth area. And then lastly, working with our GIS team, we kind of took all the maps and put them together in one. Just to give you a picture of our primary and secondary growth areas with relationship to our utilities. Just so you would have a better understanding of where we already have at least water in the ground and where we have sewer. One of the big things that was pointed out in the comprehensive plan in 2019 did involve some sewer in relation to the Bermuda Run area in conjunction with Winston-Salem. One of the recommendations were to decommission the existing wastewater facility over in Bermuda Run, and we have done that, and that has allowed us to increase our capacity. Right now, we're using about 500,000 gallons per day. We have a capacity close to 1.5 million, with the benefit from an economic development standpoint of we are being charged in city rates in Winston-Salem, even though we're not in the city. So from a development standpoint, part of the plan recommended was looking at that sewer capacity on the eastern side of the county, and we have completed that, or we're in the process of doing that now. So from a comprehensive plan, it's the plan that we have. If we need to go any further, any type of major update, we're probably in a sweet spot to take a look at that, because again, this plan was written pre-COVID and the world has changed dramatically since then. The board has changed, a lot of things have changed. So if there's something that we need to deviate from, I don't necessarily think we need to specifically start from square one. But if there is something within the existing plan that we need to discuss moving forward through this process, I think now may be an appropriate time to start that. So that's kind of what I wanted to update you on. Again, if you want to go into the specific policy recommendations, we could probably do that offline another time, just because it's so in depth. But that's kind of, I think based on what I've seen in my time here, we are following our plan to a certain extent. And I hope we continue to do so in a proactive manner, so that we dictate what that growth looks like, and not somebody else who comes in here and tells us what they want to build. We're telling them what we want to see and how it matches Davie County. So,
Can you go back to the slide before that, Brian?
future land use plan or map. I wouldn't say plan, I'd say map.
Is that supposed to deviate from the secondary growth one, because it's more contracted on the future land use plan than it is on, if you add the secondary areas in of the orange or whatever you call that?
The growth strategy.
Yeah.
So you're saying, is it, when you compare it to this map?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this one, if I take this one just totally on its own, it looks a lot more compact. If I look at what the secondary growth structure is on this other one, I see lots of room for potential there, and I'm just,
Yes, because this is looking at the actual future land use specifically. It may not be a primary or secondary growth area, but it's just basically saying, in this particular spot, at the time the plan was put together, this is what we'd like to see in those particular areas of the county. So yes, I think the statement that you're saying is correct. The secondary and primary growth area map looks more contained than when you look at the actual future land use map. You know, just specifically looking at it, if you look in the Coolamy area, I don't necessarily believe in the primary or secondary growth area map that is highlighted, but in the future land use map, you can see where we are trying to direct specific types of land use.
so actually, I mean, the reverse, I guess the one that's got future, I mean, growth strategy areas is larger, future land use is more compressed. I just want to, yeah. I guess okay. Is that something that we also need to look at, do we need to further define that growth strategy areas? Because I'm trying to follow. In general questions, how far up is with my vision and with this map, how far up is some of those concentrated areas going at this point? Like the Farmington Road, how far is that going up Farmington Road where it's purple?
I want to say that is, it goes as far up north as Puddin Ridge on
Right, you
the
got
west side. And then on the east side, I believe that's where you go over to get to Pine Valley, Pine Brook, sorry, yeah.
So that would be some things in room for discussion,
Yes.
because I know there's been at least some sentiment of saying, you know, is there a natural line of demarcation closer to the high school? I know you're not that far from there, but I mean, just, that would be the kind of things that would be open for discussion.
I would agree with you, to your interpretation, that would be something that, when this plan was put together 5 years ago, that's where the vision was, and if that's not the vision today, then maybe that purple line needs to come down, or somewhere else the purple line needs to be extended up. Spot on.
And how far is the purple line up? How far are the lines up with regard to 601 North on either that? Is that Cana Road? I see Main Church Road.
Yeah.
It's like Imes Church Road.
It goes up to Imes Church Road on the western side of 601, and it goes up past, that may be Danner Road. I think Danner Road's a loop, so it looks like part of the loop is purple and part of it is pink.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you bring into play, and I know that's not primary, but if you bring into play, you know, Bobbitt Road and all that out there, I mean, if there's anything that looks like uber farmland, we've got that through there that, you know, it might be a growth strategy area, but what's going to give it growth? A sewer, doesn't perk well. I mean, it's, so, stuff to consider.
Right. Yeah, I think it's all stuff worth considering, and again, I think we're at a prime point to take a look at this in more detail now that we've had a couple years and we've had some development to look at these different areas and to see what is still, you know, in your vision of what you want to see. And I don't think you all expected that to be made right here today, but as we move forward, I think that's something we want to look at. Same thing on the future land use map as well. Just to kind of wrap things up for today, all of our options today are not meant to slow down growth and development. They're just meant to be a tool or an enhancement of what we already have. We definitely want our options to help steer growth in a manner that conforms with the values of Davie County. Again, like I said, we want to dictate what we want to see coming here. Any changes would require planning board approval, public hearings, formal approval. So, you know, today you could direct us on a path, but obviously there's a couple of steps that we would have to go through before we made any formal changes to anything that we've recommended or anything that you want to see change. Everything that we've recommended, everything that we've discussed so far is available for change, for specifics, for tweaks, however you want to see it. And then in the interim, and we really haven't set a defined finish line of time what this looks like, but in the interim, I know myself, Mr. Easter, any of our staff that are involved in development and growth are more than willing to sit down and talk to you one-on-one or however we need to do to identify anything that we want to bring back for you all for consideration. So that's what we have today presented. We're all here. If you have any more questions about anything that we presented or anything that's currently going on from a growth and development standpoint.
Any questions or any comments? I mean, we're to the end of the presentation. Commissioners, Richard?
The only comment that I would have, I came in here today expecting, which I know even Mecklenburg County had the same conversation probably 100 years ago because they were concerned over what was coming to their county, what they foresaw, and now the whole Charlotte has taken over the whole of Mecklenburg County, and there's no farmland left to discuss about down there. And we know that probably 100 years from now, we'll be in the same position they're in. I want to make sure, though, that people understand if you want your family farm to remain a farm, you need to look at the land preservation people that come around and talk to you about putting your land into that use. And that helps to preserve it, but you've got so many farms out here with so many children and those families that own the farm that one child decides they don't want to have a farm and they demand their part of it. You have to sell that farm, and that's what becomes the future development in Davie County. So we need to encourage as much as we can that people voluntarily get into these programs. We don't want to have to do it as a board, because where do you draw the line and say, this land right here you can develop, this land you can't? If you're going to sell it, you got to sell it to a farmer. He can't afford to pay anything and keep farming it, because you'll never get it paid off that way. But I think this is progress, and we're going in the right direction. And I would like for everybody in the county to be involved in it, everybody, because we all have an interest in what goes on here.
Just kind of a follow-up on that, I guess, I think this is great. I'd like to understand, where do we go with it next? I mean, over the several years, we've had plans, and plans change, and I get that. It's, it's to be adapted. But I think, if we can say this is momentum today to talk about this, and I'd like to understand what is the next step, just to, again, keep it going, because there is some, I think, concern in the county that we're growing too fast. And if that is the sentiment of the county, so be it. Let's deal with it. But I would like to understand what the next steps are.
Brent, do you have anything?
I think the biggest single frustration I have with trying to talk about housing and as I sometimes call it, the disingenuous conversation that surrounds, we have manufacturing and we have business, and then they want housing for those workers. And of course, you see the price point that Johnny described. It's like the dog chasing the tail. We're not finding any options out there for workforce housing. When we use that as an argument to further develop, we're only lying to ourselves that we're just developing so somebody that maybe lives somewhere else that has a pretty good job can just relocate to Davie County and not necessarily invest in Davie County. And I don't want to make it feel like that people aren't welcome to come here, but building housing based on all these premises that are not even what it's ultimately used for, like people who are teachers and law enforcement officers and people. Right now, with 6.5%, 7%, a $300,000 home is hard to afford. You go look up the data. We're talking about, I think I looked, $1,700 for a certain size. Now it's $2,700. That's a big difference. $1,000 is a lot of difference between what a payment was 2 years ago on that type of house. So, I think we need to come to grips with that and quit using that as a selling point. If we can come up with some ways to give some housing for workforce, I'm all for that. I will support that 100%. But let's not use it as an argument just for somebody to develop something so we can attract people from all around to come live here, but not really live here. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I welcome anybody to come here, but let's try to help the citizens we have here as much as growing something just to bring more and more people here. And one final comment, we've got 267 square miles. I keep saying that. We don't have this infinite amount. I know we've got a lot of green space in the area, but we need to remain cognizant of that, because go down to places like Apex and stuff. Apex High School many years ago was a 1A high school. Well, now there's Apex, it's a double 4A, and there's other schools right around there. Now, I know that's closer to the epicenter of things, but we're in a pretty popular area too. So we got to be careful. And I'll say one more thing to what Richard said, and I've said it the other night. if people out there listening care about wanting their farms to stay farms and not roll over in their grave, then you need to look into land trust, preservation easements, things like that. You need to make some things to control it from the grave, because your siblings that are your family or kids that live in Georgia or somewhere else, they don't really care about that when you're gone on. And they're going to sell it, and then it puts us in a bad position, because it gets into that role of, we don't want to get into the role of trying to control what everybody does with every piece of land in the county.
Anita?
I won't repeat a lot of what's already been said, but I will say that I do like the idea of asking for more of their plans and more of their decisions before we make decisions and before we approve. I think we already know what not doing that has done to some of our county. So we do need to be a little stricter and request more information before we make decisions. And I would like for us to find a way to get some citizen input. We need to hear from the citizens in a way to for them to let us know what they want from the county. Because I don't want to see it all destroyed and all of our land destroyed, and I would like to see us preserve some farmland and to acknowledge our farmers and our farmland.
Anything else? Well, I would just say this, we need to chew on this, a lot of information here. I would like to see at our Tuesday night meeting, maybe a time that the commissioners could ask questions. We've got, 5 or 6 days to read over the first line of this, and then we might come back with some corrections and updates and thoughts that we get. Because, there clearly, I think there's, we do want to control growth in terms of sprawl. But there's a couple things in here I think we need to think intensely about, because instead of controlling the sprawl, it may exasperate the sprawl, and we just do not want that. I hope we can do that at our Tuesday meeting if we're prepared for it. If nobody has questions, we'll move on with it. But I think Terry brings up a good point. For those that our brother Terry Brawley are out talking to, they need some answers before they even come to the table. And so if we can provide those, that's certainly what we need to do. So, anything else? Okay.
I'll say
Renee,
one more
please.
comment. I know I often hear people say that folks want to move here because of our quality of life. But if we're destroying that quality of life, that's not accomplishing what I'm after. So I think we need to make sure we're maintaining that.
Several years ago, and I'm going to end here, Dan Barrett and I brought something before the Board of Commissioners when we were kind of it was more of a residential kind of we really were building a lot of residential, we had a lot of residential growth. And we talked about the issue of doing impact studies and requiring these developers to at least, especially on the residential end, to look at what the impact would be to infrastructure, so we're not constantly chasing our tail. We have some idea how it's going to impact schools, it's going to impact our parks, all of the things that we do in terms of our quality of life, roads, those kind of things. I think we've got to have a little bit of vision, and I hope this is where we can work with our brothers and sisters in the municipalities to understand that, large developments, high-density developments, though we don't have any control over them in the municipalities, they do have an impact on our schools. They do have an impact on our law enforcement. And so, we got to come together, I think, and have a broad conversation over this, including the citizens of Davie County, because it's not really what our vision is, it's what the people of Davie County want. And so we're going to take this slow and meticulous, But I think we do have to really, you've given us some great ideas and things to work with. So if we have nothing else, we'll stand adjourned then. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
All right, Richard, second.
Second.
All right, Benita, all in favor? Okay. Hey, thanks for coming. Yeah.